So, I don't know if you know. I was thinking about this. I know that we don't optimize on life as human beings. And if people say that, I almost always question that. And what I was thinking about was cars. And there's definitely room for somebody that wants to be creative, that's good at design, to rethink the car. We're sort of going through this right now, vehicles in general. But I want you to look at a car, and I'm sitting in my car watching cars go by, and we carry around a lot of wasted space. There is always a ton of wasted space that we have in our cars. We drive these giant things, and yet, you know, there is generally, for most people in a car, at least in North America, there are, at least three more spots that are completely empty, plus a storage container in the back. And I think it's really fascinating how we end up doing this with much of our life, and we don't even sort of question this, what that might look like, right? And I'm not saying redesigning a car, this is where it could be really interesting, is that you can redesign something such that it's module. There's modules and they link together. I understand the social net, the reason why we do this, right? So on the production side, it's just cheaper to produce one particular thing that looks all the same, one little widget. And then on the social side, as us as individuals, we like more, being together in groups, right? A group of, we're probably most ideal in groups of like 5 or 6, and then things start breaking down a little bit. And it's really fascinating that we do this as human beings, and then it sort of comes out in these cars that are very inefficient for what we actually do, and we don't rethink these particular designs. Now we're undergoing a complete change and redesign of the engine behind it, and it's becoming a lot more it's becoming a lot more smaller. The actual engine, we don't need that much, a little tiny battery. And we can redesign these things so they're interlinking and modular somehow so that they connect. And I think about this all the time. It's like, why haven't we done that? I understand some of the reasons why we don't do this, but it's still really fascinating that nobody rethinks it and looks at, like, hey, we've got a ton of wasted space that we're always shipping around, and nobody questions it. It's the same thing as a house, right? Houses are incredibly wasteful. Most houses are incredibly wasteful. Even an apartment, they're incredibly wasteful because we have all these spaces that we don't really use. And I think about that a lot. Like, to what extent, what is the optimal level of living space? Um, Too small, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. And what is that too small limit where it becomes really uncomfortable for people? That is somewhat of a social construct, right? Like if you go back, even if you just go back 50, well, now it's probably, 80 years in the wartime, houses that were built after that, which were relatively large houses. They're tiny compared to today. They're, in North American speak, like 800 to 1200 square feet. I don't know how many square meters that actually is, but much, much smaller. And that was considered a relatively large house, a comfortable house at the time. And yet, most houses, even apartments, it doesn't matter where you go. That's a relatively small, maybe in Tokyo, it's a little pretty big. But, for most places, an 800 square foot apartment it's on the medium side. It's not on the large side anymore. So those things are all defined clearly. If you're an economist, you'd say it depends on supply and demand, but it's more of a social construct than anything, right? It's what we define as appropriate, and then we fix that supply and demand in response to that. That's where I disagree with some, people that are hardcore economist types, is that we don't understand that there's a lot of social components to this in terms of how we define this particular market. So what's fascinating with all of this is we don't rethink these things, right? We particularly, houses and cars and all these things that are personal possessions. It's very expensive to have as big of a car or living space as we actually do in terms of what we actually use of it. So how can we rethink it? What might that actually look like, right? We don't optimize on what is the ideal situation. And most people don't do that, right? We think of it as what is the biggest thing that we can afford, which is more, and why do we do that, right? Well, it's demonstrating social status, right? That's ultimately that's what it is, right? If you look at the trucks and the beautiful cars that people have, they're giant because they're communicating something to other people. It's not like you actually need those particular things. I always find it really funny, like these people with the big, beautiful $150,000 trucks, with the six wheels on them. And there's a lot of them with the six wheels on them, and they're giant, they're huge, and they're the most pristine automobiles you've ever seen. But they're designed, for towing things, or designed to go mudding, those kind of things. But they're never dirty. And it's just really funny in terms of how we deal with these. It's communicating something to other people. So, what is it that we can do? How can we redesign these things? Well, it's coming to terms with that might be something that we have to build in, right? Like the smallest, most efficient thing is not necessarily the best, but that doesn't mean we can't make things modular in some sort of way and rethink how this happens and allow people to have these really strange, whatever that they actually want, right? That sort of communicates to other people. And if there's car designers that are listening to this, I encourage you to sort of stretch, or building designers or whatnot, is to really stretch in terms of what the world looks like than what it actually is right now, and see if you can imagine different things. I know that's going to be very difficult to sell, but at the same time, it allows you to unhinge and detach from all of these ways that we imagine things. So in my mind, I'm thinking of, very, very modular, sort of, almost like Lego bricks, cars, right? That you can connect things. Modular homes that are very much like Lego bricks. And I know that has a different name, but, or different connotation, but thinking about things and how you can connect things in a modular way, and so that it's almost disposable in some sort of sense, could really revolutionize things. This was very, and where am I getting this inspiration from? This was revolutionary for the shipping industry. So there's these little containers and container ships that you can see. Those were fundamentally the reason why we have such cheap goods today, is because that we're able to put things in these sort of modular designs, and allow us to ship things very inexpensively around the world. Before that, it was very costly to do it, and we wouldn't have done things. But we can design our homes in this sort of way that maybe they interconnect. We move things, change things around so that they're semi permanent. And the modular homes that you're thinking of today are terrible compared to what we could do with a design like this, or automobiles that interconnect and allow us to connect in different ways. Those could be very much breakthrough, and they can very much be a lot more efficient and be much more um, suited to how we actually live life. But we have to think very creatively when we actually do those. So, all right, take care. Have a wonderful day.